welcome to Tsunamii exclusive interviews. And today, who we got with us today?
Hi, so my name is Dr. Steve Ross. Just call me Steve. It's all good.
Dr. Steve.
Yep. You want me to talk a little bit more about my highlights and things like that?
Who are you? What brings you into Tsunamii?
Yeah, so, what brings me here, just being complete transparency, me and David are brothers.
Big bro.
How many years older am I than you? Because what year were you born? Because I'm
2001.
It's 2001. So
exposing me.
I know, right? So yeah, 13 years. And so when David finally came around, I changed his diapers. I remember, feeding him with a bottle and everything. So I always like to tell, my wife likes to say that I'm house trained because I got you. But I'm here today to really just talk about college and why I think it's a good option for people and why college is more than just the academic degree. I mean, I'll talk about my own experience and whatnot, but like I had such a dope experience in college, so much that I work in higher education. My doctorate is in both my master's and my doctorate in higher education. The joke I like to tell people is like, I got my college degree in college, and so, but really just talking about it. So yeah, I went to Chico State for my undergrad, so I'm a Cal State guy.
Shout out Chico.
Yeah, man, Chico's great. If you're Sac State is doing some dope stuff right now. I don't know how much you heard about that.
I know about the new arena. A lot of them aren't that happy about.
All right, well that is what it is.
Yeah.
But so the president of Sac State, I have been following him. So I'm a bit of a higher. Well, I can't say a bit of a higher. I have a doctorate in it. So, but the president of Sac State used to work at San Diego State, and he did all his work in like diversity. But his primary focus was in poverty and food insecurity, particularly for Black men, but just in general. And he was so broke. He said him and his twin went to college at the same time. He said they were so broke they would scrounge around for 69 cents on the ground. It was like, oh, if you can get 69 cents, that means I can get a bean and cheese burrito from Taco Bell, and that'll hold me over until tomorrow. And I'm like, that's broke. So he's now at Sac State doing some dope stuff. They just opened the Black Honors College there. They're the first college in California to be recognized as a Black serving institution.
Oh, really?
And it's so funny because the bar, like when you hear about it, the bar sounds super low. So you only have to have either 2,000 Black students or more, or 10% of your total student population has to be Black, which isn't a high bar to reach, but you'd be surprised. I used to work at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Yeah, the demographic is not very diverse.
Nah, we had, because I ran the Black Student Center there, we had less than 1% that identified as Black, and then when you counted biracial and multiracial students, it was like 1.5%. And this is out of 17,000. So it's to have Sac State be on that is tough, right? So I'm a huge fan of the CSU system. So I got my master's my bachelor's from Chico State. I got my master's from the University of Denver. That's how I ended up out there is beyond me, but yay, mentors. And then I got my doctorate from Fresno State, which is something a lot of people don't realize you can do. So yeah.
Cool. Talk a little bit more about Sac State. What else are they doing over there that's like really like making moves in Sacramento, especially for, like you said, like young African American students?
Yeah, so they're opening the Black Honors College, and so that is a college specifically geared towards like supporting like Black students in order to get them to achieve higher and higher. Wow. I mean, what's nice about Sac State is it's kind of geographically positioned in a place to be able to be successful, in that if you look at the Bay Area and you count the number of schools just from San Francisco down to San Jose, it's like you've got San Francisco State, San Jose State, Stanford, I work at Santa Clara, Dominican, you got all these, and there's East Bay, like all these schools that are there. But then you sort of, as you start to look above the Bay, like there aren't as many schools. Like you got Cal Maritime in Vallejo, but if you're in Sac, you may not want to go all the way to Vallejo. And that school is specialized for people who want to go in the fields, work in the water and Navy and things like that. You've got Sac State. You got a couple private colleges around here that are kind of like
University Pacific.
Yeah, kind of like, all right,
it's cool. Shove out some cash,
right? And I'm not even counting Stockton. So like, UOP and Stanislaus State. Like, I'm not even counting them.
Yeah, we have a campus, UOP campus.
Oh, y'all do
downtown now.
Okay,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then you get Sac State. Then kind of Sac State and Davis. Those are your two options, unless you want to go all the way up to Chico or Humboldt.
Wait, what's the other one? UC, was it Irvine?
Irvine's down south.
Oh,
So
south.
Davis is the one that's up here. And so Sac State, especially because it's actually in Sacramento, it's uniquely positioned to be able to support people who live in Sacramento. And like, if you're somebody who can afford to like leave and go somewhere, all right, great. But if you're like, I'm from Sac, like I live at home, whatever. Sac is a great place, and that institution is making a lot of good moves. They just opened up, because I've been following them. I'm not on social media except for LinkedIn because I'm a nerd, and so LinkedIn is a great place to get locked in if you want to connect with people.
No, for
like,
sure.
Professionally.
Actually, I'm about to get on there.
Yeah, and so, but I follow them on LinkedIn. So they just started a combat sports team. So they have a boxing team
At Sac State?
Yeah. And
Wow.
that's, the president was like really behind that. Because I mean, think about it. It was typically the story of people who come from sort of underrepresented and underserved communities. Combat sports, boxing, UFC is a way to progress themselves. All right, well, if you're looking to serve underserved communities, why wouldn't you have a boxing team, right? So he's doing that. And then it's a CSU, and the CSU system, when it comes to supporting people and helping people achieve their education, because we still know that, I know there's a bit, I'm talking a lot, so no. Yeah. I know a lot of people still talk about like what's the value of college, but really what it comes down to is it's still the number one way to, if you want to raise your socioeconomic status, you want to go from being broke to being not broke. Like, sure, like when y'all was talking to Money Man with the plan, he had me dying because he was like, it's about getting your bread, it's about having a plan. And it's like, great, if you have a talent that's like, oh, I can rap, or I can sing, or I can play sports, right? Go do that. But if you're, you're more regular, you're like myself, and you're like, all right, like I know how to read, like college is still the best way to get your money up and to be successful. And what's the beauty of like a CSU system is that like Stanford is $100,000 a year. Right, and that's granted. Now, what you get what you pay for. So,
But do you want to talk about what you pay for? Because I think a lot of people who just never pay that price don't ever know what you get for that price. So knowing people at Davis, like I was like, that's actually what got me more interested in college. Like hearing like what they're doing, and like some of the projects that they're allowed to go, and some of the field trips, and like like some of the opportunities that they're offered. I was like, okay, I kind of understand, So what are some opportunities that people were being offered at Stanford that would kind of make that?
I'll start off with the CSU system. I won't even talk about Stanford, because it's like, what's the benefit of a Honda Accord versus what's the benefit of a Bentley? You know what I mean? Like, so I'll tell you about some of the things I did at Chico State. One was we shot a pilot for a TV show. Downstairs below the library, there's a whole TV studio down there, and I'm usually just like, whatever my boys is on, I'm on. So I don't even know where they're going. I'm just like, and I've been there for 3 years at this point. Had no idea this place existed. They was like, yeah, we finna go do this thing, come follow us. So I was like, bet, I'm there. We go down there, it's a whole TV studio. And this was before podcast was really a thing. So he's just like, we got TV cameras, we got a director, we got a crew, we got
a whole media studio.
And he's shooting a talk show.
Yeah.
And he invited all these like local artists to come, and was doing it like
kind of like what we're doing.
Like Jay Leno, like, oh, well, sit down tonight. Well, today we got linguistics on the thing, and tell us what you're doing. And it was so dope. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, and I didn't even realize that, like, well, being a director was kind of, because I was like in the back, I wasn't really involved, but I started directing without even realizing. I was like, okay, I was going to my friend and I was like, okay, you've got more personality in this. I need to see more from you. And then I was talking to people and I was like, all right, your face is a little shiny, you this, you that, okay, try to pick. And I'm like, I didn't even know this was something that I wanted to do. So it was like, there's the TV studio. People recorded multiple songs on campus. Chico had a major called Applied Computer Graphics. And it was for everybody who wanted to make video games. And it was just like, my friend, his freshman year, he created a little animation of a stick figure sneaking into like a movie premiere. And it was doing like all kind of stupid backflips and stuff. But he had access to like Wacom tablets and computers, and they rendered everything for him. I got to go wakeboarding. I got to go kayaking up in the river. I got to like sit in on psychology sessions and participate in studies. So it's, when you talk about like what's the benefit of college, right? Especially beyond just the degree, because everybody's like, there's a number of ways to get that degree. It's the it's the ability to practice and try the things that you want to do in a space that allows you to fail. So if I'm really working at a TV station, I can't mess up, right? I can't. There's all these people that are counting on, and there's big money on the line. Meanwhile, I'm just down there with a bunch of people who've never worked in a TV station before, and we're just trying things out, and seeing how things work. So that's really the benefit of it. So when you take like what the CSU was able to offer, and then you take something like Stanford, right, which is $100,000 a year. What was wild about Stanford was there was one student org. They were an entrepreneurial organization. So they were all, it was all these people hustling. They make partnerships. That all they do is go out and be like, hey, we want to connect with you. They didn't even ask for no money from the university, but they met with me and they're like, yeah, our budget is $400,000 this year. And I'm like, where the hell are y'all getting $400,000 from? And they're like, no, we just go out there and raise that. And then from that, we host different people. They hosted different companies, so Adobe and Intuit and I forgot, NVIDIA and all these other, and venture capitalists. And so if you're a student and you're like, hey, I think I want to get into investing, right? All of a sudden, now you got the student organization. It's not even an official campus thing. It's a student organization that's like, oh, by the way, we're going to invite this person who is a venture capitalist out to just talk to you about how to get into business. Oh, and there were a number of student orgs that would be like, oh, we're going to do a career fair. So we're the engineering student org. We're going to have this engineering company come out and tell us how to become engineers. So all of a sudden you get access to information and people that you normally wouldn't be able to get access to. And because you're on a college campus, they're also trying to recruit you as well. So these companies would reach out and be like, do y'all need pizza? What do y'all need? Do y'all want to do a tour? Yeah, we can get y'all dinner. What y'all need? Because they're then trying to recruit from those places. And on the flip side, the students are getting internships. So it's like, we know everybody want a job at Google. Everybody want a job at Apple. Everybody want a job at Facebook, right? How do you think these people are getting these jobs? Because they're highly competitive. Well, if you've done the last 3 years, if you've been doing your summer internships at Microsoft, you're probably going to get a job at Microsoft. But we got my wife works in the Career Center at Stanford. We got a whole Career Center that I hope you get an internship at Microsoft. So that when you leave, you work at Microsoft. So it's all these different resources and things that if you, a random street dude, right, you could have a hustler's mind, but you got to work 100 times harder just because you don't have access to the resources. And simply being connected to a college connects you to a vast resource of people who are willing to help you out. You know how many people I've met that are Chico State alums? Like I recently met with the principal because my job right now, we work down the street from middle school. I met with the middle school principal. He like, well, I went to Chico State too. Now we locked in. So anything I need from him, I can get. But guarantee you, if I was looking for a job, all of a sudden we got that connection. Now I can reach out to him as an alumni. So it's the networking, it's the opportunities to practice just about anything you want to do. Even if you want to do something like, I was a psychology major, you can do a lab in psychology. We got scientists. When I was at Davis, I worked at Davis for a little bit. We had people that were like, oh, you want to cure cancer? All right, like, let's do this cancer research then. And people working in labs and everything else. So it's the opportunity to practice in real environments with a bunch of safety parameters. And it's like ridiculous things. If you're an architect, at Cal Poly we had a big architecture program. And one of their things was you got to build a chair. And it was like, I'm like, why are we're literally reinventing the chair? But then you see 40 different ways that a chair can be designed, and all it was.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
no, definitely eye opening. One of the things I noticed about college is that you get opportunities to make like life changing projects and studies and things like that. A lot of times, like for your final project, you'll have to do like a study or something like that, and you're like just doing your own study on something completely like your own like work, you know, publish it and journals and things like that. And that's like something that I thought was really cool because you know, a lot of people like kind of think they're just kind of paying to go to school, but it's like, no, you're paying for like lots of different opportunities and like connections, and like it's really a cool thing.
So that's part of it, right? So my line of work, I work in student affairs. So a lot of people don't even know my work exists. And so you're on a college campus, right? If you're not a college student, right? You're 20 years old, you work at whatever job. Say you have a breakdown, right? And you're just like, life is terrible right now. I'm feeling horrible. Outside in the real world, right? You just expected to sort of deal with that and make your way through. on a college campus, they have psychologists that work on campus, and you can say, "Hey, I'm having a bad day," and this is where the levels start to come in, because if you're at a Stanford, it's a bit more. Somebody will go seek you out. They'll be like, "Hey, you ain't been to class today." Which, if you were at a CSU, nobody like you
might get an email,
right?
Automated email,
right? When the F show up, you'll know you haven't been to class. But like, so you're in the midst of like, you're like, I'm feeling depressed. I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know what to do. You can make an appointment with a psychologist on campus.
Yeah, UC Davis, actually, I went to the graduation. They have like this Aggies Mental Health Center or something like that.
Yeah.
Multiple mental health. They had like this. I was at the graduation, and the single mom who graduated, she actually was like the founder, or like helped create one of these centers that was like for single mothers at UC Davis, that helped provide resources and like for, you know, motherly like needs for like, you know, parenting and things like that.
Right.
Because she was struggling as a single mother, you know, going to UC Davis and things like that. So.
And what's great is that, like, as staff that work at the university, not on the academic side, but on the student side, right? Like, trying to support students. When people come to us with ideas like that, we're only limited by money. But if we can find ways to figure out how to better support students, Stanford has a first-generation center, first-generation college students. First generation and low income college student center, and they treat it the same as their Black student center, as their Indigenous student center. And so if you're low income, aka, well, Stanford's definition of low income is anybody under $120,000.
Crazy,
ridiculous, right?
Crazy.
And this is the thing, people be like, oh, I wouldn't be able to afford Stanford. That's not true though. Because if you make under 120 a year, if your parents collectively make under 120 years, they'll pay for the whole thing for you. They'll just be like, whatever, just you're smart enough to get in, come here. And it's a lot of financial aid and things like that. So, where was I going with this? Just,
lots of resources available. That's like
right.
Just in general for people. There's lots of resources. You just have to go out there, seek them. You know, scholarships. There's like sponsorships, there's like internships, so many different ways to get like access to tools.
And there's literally somebody to help with anything. So I work in Santa Clara. My role, I work for the Dean of Students. In my role, I'm an assistant dean who is responsible for helping students who live off campus. So about half our students live on campus, half our undergraduate students live on campus, about half undergraduate live off. So if you are living off campus and you're struggling, I'm there to help you. If you're struggling if you got a lease if you're like, I don't know if I want to sign this lease, my office will help you out with that. If you're like, oh, like one dude, he came to us because a homeless dude broke into his apartment, stole a bunch of stuff, then came back and was sleeping on the property. And
nigga said, I run this.
Like, the cops
a nice place, nigga.
Right. And, like, the cops wouldn't help. Like, he was trying to get his landlord to change the locks. Wouldn't do it. So he came to us. I'm like, bet. I make one phone call to code enforcement, so the city. All of a sudden, everything's fixed, right? Now, had he not been a student, you out, right? But now you got somebody that's literally, my job is to make sure your landlord is treating you right. You got somebody to make sure that you're going to class. Not necessarily going to class on time, but that like, oh, say you need help figuring out what classes to take, we got academic advisors for you. Say you like, oh, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I want to, like, I'm interested in studying this, but I don't know what I'm going to do with that. We got people to help you figure it out.
Career navigation.
Yep. You say you like, I'm having a rough time with my mental health, we got people for that. I'm having a rough time with my physical health, we got people for that. I want to lose
quickly
weight.
On physical health, you know, my sister, she's looking at like all of like the amenities that you get from like, you know, the tuition and things like that. And it was like, you know, gym, and it's like the pool. It's like, so basically it's like when you pay your tuition, you get access to pretty much all these amazing facilities, right? That you would, you know, you want to go to the gym outside school, you probably have to pay like, you know, your little monthly membership.
No,
competing with all these.
Let me put you on game. What's the nicest gym you can think about? Tell me the nicest gym you can think about here in Sac.
I don't know.
Right?
Whatever. I'm going to cheap gyms, 20, you know.
Yeah, okay, right.
Planet Fitness, choose.
And like maybe 24 hours, right?
Yeah,
like
24 hours is a little bit more bougie, but it'd be packed though, because it's bougie.
Lifetime? Okay, Lifetime Fitness.
Shout out Luca.
Right? I guarantee the gym at your college, the gym at the university, better than that. Way better. You're talking about pools. You're talking about hot tubs. You're talking about any sort of rec thing, ping pong, spin classes,
basketball courts.
Multiple.
My friends be inviting me like, yo, come to campus, let's go play some basketball.
Right.
He'd be like, I don't really go to the park. I like playing on the campus because there's no random people, things like that. Everyone's cool.
And a normal gym, like, because the nice one in the Bay Area is Equinox, right? You're talking $150 a month on the low end. You're getting all those same amenities, and that's just part of. Now, granted, it's not free, right? The way that college tuition works is that you pay for the classes. If you live on campus, you also have a separate charge for room and board and food and all that. Then there's a student activities fee. It can be called a bunch of different things, but there's typically a student activities fee, which covers, like, student events, like when student orgs plan events, it covers that, but it also covers, like, the gym, and if your campus is a bowling alley and things like, it'll cover that. So it's not exactly free, but you're automatically paying into it. So why wouldn't you use that? So you get a lot of people that step on college the first time and was like, I'm finna hit the gym, I'm finna do this, because it's like, all right, great, you want to get into swimming, it's somebody that'll teach you how to swim, they'll teach you how to swim, then you can just go swim laps whenever you want. All
whenever you want, yeah.
Chico, I think in 2010 or 11, they called it the Rec. And all of a sudden we was in there and it was like indoor jogging track, huge hot tub, Olympic-sized pool. On the second floor was cardio machines, the track, and like a separate workout. And on the first floor, they had all the free weights. They had the basketball gym, which had also turned into the indoor soccer place. And I swear we was in there like it was everything, because it was like, oh, I can come here. This is stuff I would do anyways, right? But I can do it in an air-cooled environment. I can organize games. I can do whatever, and I can get in shape and stay healthy in a way that is productive, instead of having to sort of figure out or hope I can get in shape. And what we find is that, like, when college students have a way to positively burn off a lot of that stress, they get better grades, right? And it's like, all right, instead of going to that party tonight, all right, I can go hoop with my friends. And for those, especially those that like wanted to go D1 or wanted to really hoop, but we got leagues for them. So it's like, so you got 3 levels of sports. You got the Division One with those is the ballers that get paid, and they about that life. Then you got club sports, which is still people who want to compete, but maybe they didn't want to go D1 or didn't want to play in like the varsity sports per se, but they still want to compete and be competitive. Yeah. So we got a whole separate league for them. And then those people actually travel and compete with other schools as well. So like rugby is one that you see a lot of. So
you say we at Santa Clara?
When I say we, I'm talking higher ed in general. Or higher ed in general. So like, general, yeah. So college like club soccer at Stanford, because with travel restrictions, not with restrictions, but like you're paying for a lot of that on your own. Okay, well, like we'll go play San Francisco State. They're right down the street. So it's club, like a lot of club rugby teams. We're seeing club cricket pop up a lot, which is kind of cool. But it's like, so I can compete and really be part of this team and do everything that a varsity sports team would do, but without necessarily the same level of commitment and resources that a varsity team would get. And then there's like the rec leagues, which is just like the inner sort of within the college. So I did flag football for my intramural sports is what we call them. And I did flag football, and we just had like a different game every week for like 10 weeks. And it was cool. And then you make it to playoffs, and you get to play for a trophy.
Just within the college?
Just within the college, right? Cool. And so it's like, there's so many ways to stay active. Otherwise, if you think about like adult sports leagues.
Got me wanting to get to some higher education right now.
I mean, and that's what's so dope about college. Like, there's a reason I don't work in admissions. I'm not going to tell you that one college is better than others, because Stanford is great. Stanford is ranked up there with Harvard and Yale and all the other like top of the top schools. The challenge there is it may not be the best spot for you, because it's a academically competitive environment, because you're in there with everybody who's had 4.0s their entire lives. Mom and dad let them do nothing but study, and that was all they had to do. So of course they were getting 4.0s. And then understand that Stanford had thousands of applications and can only let in so many people. So but you're in there, it's academically competitive. People want to be a part of it. And if that's the environment you thrive in, go for it. And I know there's some people that need that competitive edge, that need that, like, all right, it's me versus you, but in a good way, right? Like, I want
people
that
just love being competitive in general.
Right. And so that's a really good environment. I think going to Chico for me was the best place possible, because it was kind of like, shit, you went to college. I bet. Like, nobody's bragging. Like, it's not a flex that I went to Chico on you, right? But what that did was it allowed for an environment where people really just mess with each other. We was like, all right, cool. So the cool part about Chico, I'm gonna brag about my alma mater for a little bit. 90% of the students live within a mile of campus. So I know Chico has a reputation for being a party school, but it has less to do with the school itself or anything that they do, and more about geography. One is way up north.
And weren't you an RA?
I was an RA at Chico,
Yes.
yeah. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's like you have 90% of the students that live within a mile of campus. So I say party on 5th and Ivy, and I literally have friends that did that. It would be like 11 o'clock. They'd be like, hey, it was two, it was a house of 4. You had 2 DJs, and they were both dope. You had he wasn't a promoter, but I'm going to call him a promoter because he put out one phone call. Whole city knew what was up. And then you had...
No, that's
a promoter, right? And then you had another dude, like, he wasn't a model, but he was the pretty boy, so I caught, like, in my mind, he was the model, right?
Host type.
So you had 2 DJs, a promoter, and a host. Of course they gonna throw bangers. And we get back from, we got from partying, or sometimes they would just be like, we're gonna throw one tonight. All right. I remember I worked security for one of their parties. It was wild. But they put out one call, whole city just walked to their party, and it's turned. It's turned
Their
up.
ticket interest is like,
It's
just pulling
Chico.
up.
You just pull up, right? And so it was like, so that what was dope about Chico was because it wasn't an academically competitive environment. Everybody was willing to everybody was just messing with everybody. So it was like cool. And then it was like, all right, cool. It's Friday night. There ain't nothing to do. You might have got your homework done. Like, all right, cool. Let's see what's popping tonight. Oh, cool. We got a text from AD. All right, cool. Let's roll out. And you're gonna see your boys there. So it's all good. And
that sounds cool. It's cool.
So it's a cool little environment. So that's what college is dope if you lock in right. I will say on the flip side, when you go to college, and I think this is something that people that go to college and aren't necessarily successful, everything you want, both good and bad, is there, and it's free. Now, free within reason, right? But if you want resources, if you somebody who's like, I'm a hustler, I get it in. That's what I do. I chase paper. It's infinite amount of paper to chase out there. You grants. There's jobs, there's you can get locked into a lab, you can all the things you want, you can get connected. But it's also an environment where you have tens of thousands of 18 to 24-year-olds. So everything you want, both good and bad, is there. And so a lot of people sort of get lost in it. So that's when you see these graduation rates. I won't take away from the systemic challenges that people face based on identity and other things. That's a whole separate issue that we can get into. But when it's everything you can drink, everything you can smoke, available to you 24/7, any kind of hard chemical, like hard drugs you want, parties available every night, and you connected and you locked in. If you get focused on the wrong track, and this happened to a couple of my boys, they just got locked in the wrong way, they didn't make it. And it's just, so you have to, that's what's great. That's that's the test in college, is are you disciplined enough and can you focus enough on what you're supposed to be doing in order to be successful? Because you got to keep that final goal, and at the end of the mind is yes, I want to connect. I want to take advantage of all the resources. I want to make sure that I'm here, there, and making moves. Because you essentially around a bunch of people hustling, trying to make their lives better. So you lock into that hustling mentality. But it's so easy to get caught up the wrong way, and then people stop going to class, and and it's so easy to be like, well, I'll just skip this class today. Well, I skipped this class. And there's no accountability in terms of you're an adult now, you're 18. Whether or not you go to class is up to you, right?
You already paid, nigga. Who cares?
Right. And there'll be times when people check in and be like, hey, you good? But for the most part, if you just choose to stop going, nobody's going to look at you like, hey, that's not great. So it's a lot of that. You got to really be motivated, and you got to understand why you're there, and how to have fun and take advantage of opportunities, but understand your responsibilities that are there. Because a lot of people coming from high school, they'll be they're used to having mom and dad or whoever around, right? When you get in trouble and fighting in class, the teacher's in trouble, the parents are in trouble.
Do you think colleges would benefit from holding students more accountable from going to classes and things like that? Even though they're all adults, it's you're still expected to show up to work. You don't show up to work and get that call.
Right. I think it's a slippery slope, right? Because we get in this argument of, and you see this a lot, especially with parents that really love their kids, right? Is how much is the college supposed to do? And it's it's that balance of, yes, you paid however much you paid, whether it's, you know, the CSU tuition or it's Stanford tuition, you paid however much you paid. You want to see your kid be successful, and you don't want to see your kid end up in an environment where they get distracted, they fall off, and you're like, well, why didn't anybody come grab my kid? Why didn't anybody? But at the same time, they are adults, and that's part of adulthood. Now, he talked about like, oh, you know, if you don't show up to work, your boss is calling you or you're getting fired. That's the same thing. Getting an F in class is the same as getting fired, right? Like, you didn't show up, you didn't complete your part of the responsibility, so you failed that class. If you fail that class, that means you got to take that class over again, and there's a financial component to that, because now you got to pay extra money to retake that class. That means
you might lose your financial aid,
right?
You know, financial probation, things like that.
And so it's understanding that the consequences are no longer like somebody wagging their finger at you, and next time you better get. It's like, nah, you failed. All right. And that's the end of the conversation. Just like if you get fired from your job, I mean, if your boss is a jerk, they might be like, let me lecture you. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm fired. Why would I listen to you? You know? So it then that's the responsibility piece that it helps teach people is like, all right, you got that F in class. Let that be a wake-up call, because you can continue to get Fs and then you get out, and now whatever plans you had for life are delayed. So that's part of it as well.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for speaking on that. I had something I wanted to ask, but tuition.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about the increasing prices of college? And I've heard that like things got pretty bad when the government started doing like, you know, subsidized loaning and things like that for.
Man, I could talk about this for hours because it's.
Let's just give us a quick rundown,
right.
Gen Z.
So what a lot of people miss about that conversation is the reason why college in the 50s and 60s was so cheap is that the government was paying for most of it. So you had, like, back in the day...
Quick thing, college used to be free. So let's say University of Oxford, hundreds of years ago, they only became a couple hundred years ago when people started, like, colleges started to charge for, like...
So that's kind of true and kind of not.
No,
so and the only reason I can correct you on that, let me go ahead and state my credentials, because as part of my dissertation research, which literally means you write a book on a topic, as part of my dissertation I had to study the history of higher ed, particularly in America, but in general. So college used to be free, but understand that it was very exclusionary. So it wasn't available to everybody. You had to know somebody or be connected to a religion or some aspect.
Yeah,
so
it makes sense. Yeah.
It might have been free for whoever could.
A lot of these were ran by like religious, sort of like the University of Oxford was probably a Catholic or Christian denomination.
And I go to Santa Clara. That was founded by the Jesuits, right? So it was part of the missions, and so it grew from a mission into a college. So college, history of college in America, it started out as like it was only there for rich white dudes. And that was the only people who could go. And then as they started expanding it, particularly after World War II, what they found was that a lot of people were coming back from the war, had this GI Bill and wanted to get educated. So you see a lot of expanding in college, you see a lot of increases in college enrollment. So from there, you get a lot of government programs paying for people to go to college, whether it's a GI Bill, and most state governments are covering a lot of that cost. As colleges have had to expand and become more expensive to run, that number starts going up. And as popular or like government opinion / political opinion of higher education is kind of flips from it being like this good thing to now people are having complaints about it and people want to get rid of the Department of Education and other things. You start to see a decrease in funding, which means college campuses now have to raise tuition in order to provide the same amount of services. But what a lot of people are missing from that conversation, and granted, don't get me wrong, college is way more expensive than it should be. Like, I'm a firm believer that college should be free. It's just how do you put a price on somebody wanting to better themselves? So I'll say that I understand why tuition has gone up, and I still think college should be free. So with that, it's kind of the schools are in a rough spot, especially when recessions hit and things like that, because they've got to figure out how to survive. And what do? Do you raise tuition? Do you limit the amount of people that can come? And if you're a system like the California State University system, which whole thing is about providing access to education, do you limit access? Do you so there's this complicated way that universities have to figure out how to navigate that, because there have been a number of universities that have closed because they couldn't afford to stay open. So with that, I think The other piece of this conversation and that's missing that a lot of people discount is they cherry pick the information that they want to look at. The CSU is still super affordable, right? Community colleges are still super affordable,
especially financial aid and all these other like
right?
resources.
And there's all these resources to help people pay, and if you can pursue scholarships.
I'm in college right now. I'm not damn. They're not paying a dime, low key.
Because you understand how to navigate your resources. But what you hear a lot about is the person that goes and gets a liberal arts degree, and then they come out in $200,000, and they end up in debt, and people are like, well, why would you get a liberal arts degree? And it's not that simple, right? It's also too, people place too much value on a name. Stanford is a great school. It costs $100,000 a year. So if you're not getting no financial aid, and you're wanting to be an English major, and you know that prospects in English, like you sort of you become a writer, and if you aren't smart about networking, and if all you did was go to class and you didn't network or take advantage of any of the writing workshops, and you didn't publish it, or like, you know what I mean, like you just
there's other aspects besides just getting a good grade,
right? So then you come out owing that money, and you took out loans to pay for the whole thing. Of course you're paying $200,000 a year, right? And now you've got that you've got $200,000 in debt for a degree that you might not be using. But I think people need to shift, because higher ed is a business. People need to shift their thinking and perspective on college from I need to get in the best college I can think of to which college is going to provide me what it is I actually need.
Like looking at department based,
or
like
even
what has the best, lots of people go to UCLA for business, their business department. I think UC Davis has one of the best nature. They're the only one that has nature, wildlife, and fish conservation biology.
They also have a really good wine and viticulture program too. So
each college usually has a few specific departments that they are like number one in the country, in business, number one and number 5, top 20, and you know.
But then people get so caught up in the rankings that that's what they focus in on. They're like, okay, I got to go to this school, even though it's going to cost a little bit more. And so I think we need to get away from looking at the name of the school and being like, what is the college rankings? And we need to start looking more like, okay, what can this department offer me, right? Is if I go to this school, will I be able to say I want to do biology, right? And I know I want to go, if I want to do biology and I'm considering maybe going to get a master's or a doctorate in biology, if I go to this undergraduate program, will I be able to work in a lab? Will I be able to work with professors as an undergraduate student? Because those are the things that are going to set me up
have access to internships and such.
Right. And so I think instead of like the way we talk about the college selection process specifically for undergrads it's not nearly good enough. And so they put themselves in a position where it's like, all right, great, you got into Berkeley. That's fantastic. But you're also there with how many thousands of other students. They're also fighting over the same amount of resources. They're also fighting over. So people need to spend more time thinking about. And here's the other thing. If you got into Berkeley, there's 300 million other colleges you can get into, right?
You probably decline 10 other letters.
Right. And so really thinking about because for my graduate programs, they were like, forget what the name of the school is. It's really about asking.
Berkeley has an interest rate of like 5%.
So all the schools, but that number's also relative though, because if you're a school like Berkeley, which means you're internationally known, you're getting how many hundreds of thousands of applications do you think they get a year, right? Or like at least tens of thousands.
Oh, let's talk about. I remember I was in high school. There's a huge, like Ivy League sort of higher education scandal with sort of like these rich people like donating money to get their kids into college and shit, and then the whole thing came crashing down. Harvard, I think it came crashing down on Harvard or somewhere.
USC, UCLA, like all these. And so the first thing I'll bring up is we often talk about.
Were you working in the colleges when that was happening?
Yeah, and so not at one of those colleges, but like we kept hearing about it.
It's a big thing, huh?
But I think it speaks to people valuing the name over what college can get to them.
Real quick, did you work at any colleges where that was happening?
I worked at Stanford.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee you.
Or Chico. What about Chico?
Nobody's fighting to get into Chico, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that was the thing, right? It was like these schools are historically known for being difficult to get into, and so you had rich people paying a lot of money for somebody, and the scam there was how they were getting these kids in. I don't know how much you looked into it. Was they were having them show up as like shadow members of athletic teams. So it would be like, oh, come bring Bob here, the coach is gonna say, oh, we need Bob for the swim team. Bob ain't never swam a day in his life, but that's how Bob is skipping the line. So it was complex, right? But it's a clearly it invalidates the whole system. It also proves that like how much money and privilege plays into the system of who gets in and who has access, because you and I wouldn't have been able to take that shortcut, right? But at the end of the day, I think it just exposed it exposed more of the privilege that people have and how they're able to access higher education. It's funny, we also talked, what we spent a lot of time comparing that to was, so people who in K through 12 move to different districts, right? Or they'll lie about where their kid lives so they go to a better school, right? And that's a like, you can go to jail for that. Mm-hmm. And so, when you hear discourse online, people are like, that's terrible. You need to go where you're at. You need to spend time in your own community. But then people would be like, well, here you got all these rich people lying about what they can do to get their kids into a better school because they know that better school is probably going to lead to a better future. All right, well, like, so there's a lot of comparison to that. So
that's
really
interesting,
yeah. So it points out more of the, like, what people's expectations for college are and just the different ways in which people with resources are willing and able to take advantage of the system in order to provide themselves more advantages than they already have.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Very interesting. Let's see what our next question is. Okay. You've presented on having effective conversations about diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. How do you create spaces where these challenging conversations can happen openly and productively?
Yeah.
Especially in today's political climate.
So I think the thing about that, and I remember that, so that was a particular presentation I did. I won't consider myself an expert. Like, I know a lot about diversity and inclusion, more than most people. Hi, Dr. Ross. But I wouldn't call myself an expert at all. But I think one thing I'm really good at is creating spaces for people to be able to discuss those things in a way that is productive. And so really, I think the first thing is helping people understand the same language and speak the same language. So when I say racism, right, I want you to define racism for me. And there are no wrong answers. I'm using you to prove a point.
I would say like a certain feeling like your race is superior to like.
So that a lot of people,
actually it's a pretty it's a convoluted term that's like, I would say it's overused a bit. That's like used in a lot of different contexts. That's like it's actually, some of my friends have actually talked about this. Is a term that defines a very specific concept, right? But it's used in it's used in place of discrimination and like pretty much a lot of other words that describe different concepts within the same category of like like treating people like differently.
Right. So you're there. So I see you working through it, right? And so what we find is that depending on who you're talking to, whether it's conservative or liberal or any people have different definitions of what racism is. And so how are we supposed to have a conversation about what racism is if we don't even have the same definition of racism, right? And I see this come up often when you hear the conversation of, can black people be racist, right?
Me and my friend, shout out D, man, we be talking about this shit all day, bro.
Right. And so what I'm doing in the space is trying to get people, one, to speak the same language. So the definition of racism is, it's a structural thing, right? So it's a group, it's anything that oppresses, or like structures, policies, sort of big picture that oppresses groups in America based on race, right? So when we talk about that, we're talking about laws, we're talking about policies, right? So a great example of this is the Chinese Exclusionary Act from way back in the day, right? That is the first immigration law in the U.S. history, right? And so and people talk about like, oh, it's not, we talk about immigrants and undocumented immigrants, it's not racist. We want to make sure people follow the law. Well, that law was created to keep out Chinese people, because Chinese people were coming here. They built the railroads. The U.S. was like, all right, we're done. Like, we did what y'all need y'all to do. And then the white men started complaining and being like, hey, we can't find jobs. And so instead of taking time to build up an infrastructure and figuring things out, they're like, we're going to blame Chinese people and kick all, and say like, no, if you're Chinese,
sounds awfully familiar right now.
Right. So when we talk about racism, the definition of racism is systemic, right? A lot of people confuse that, or some people, particularly conservatives, seem to talk about racism as I hate you because of the color of your skin, and they confuse, and that falls into discrimination, right? Because discrimination, anybody can discriminate against anybody, but to be racism, there has to be a power and an oppressed.
Mm-hmm. Like the power dynamic.
Exactly. And so when we talk about racism,
I could call you, dark monkey. Don't mean there's no power dynamic going on.
And that's what's interesting, right? Because we know that the way that when we talk about racism in America, we know that it's white people and then it's people of color, right? And then we can talk about people of color and how that ranks and all that, but that I don't know how much time we have on the podcast.
Yeah, let's just
But so you see that dichotomy, and so
white adjacent.
it gets complex, right? There are people that spent their whole lives. Sean Harper at USC, great researcher and professor, has been studying this his whole life. So who am I to talk about it, right? But so when we talk about racism, people often get confused because they'll be like, well, I'm a white man and people are racist to me all the time. I got called honky walking down the street the other day, and it's like,
cracker.
Right? And it's like, yeah, were you discriminated against? Yeah. But the great example I like to give people is if you're a black person in America, right? Imagine if all black people in America said, you know what, we do not serve white people. We don't live next to them. We don't want nothing to do with them. They got to go away. If you're white, where else can you go? Everywhere, right? You still got 90% of the country, and I'm being liberal. Like I'm on the low end. You still got a bunch of places in the country you can go. If all white people said, and this has happened, right? We see that with red zoning laws and a few other things. We're not going to serve you. We're not going to live next to you. You can't live in our neighborhoods. You can't go to our schools. Even in today's America, what cities could you go to? Parts of New York. Could you exist
you go
in
to
Sacramento?
And, very low income
right? Even
areas.
In Sacramento, where you gonna go, right? So that's what I mean when I talk about racism. And when I explain that to people, they go, "Oh, okay." Like, and the other thing too is when we're having these conversations, it's not about making people feel bad. It's not about I need you to check. Like, it can be an emotional conversation, and it's fine to have those emotions, right? But I need people to sit in those emotions and realize whatever you're feeling is good. If you're uncomfortable, that's good, because that means you're actually engaging in the conversation. And if, like, particularly when I engage with white people in this, it's yes, that it's uncomfortable to talk about racism and how you as a white person benefit from it, but not talking about it is the wrong way to go about it. Like, you need to understand. You need to understand this. And this is
even as black people, we need to understand how racism affects us,
right? Or how we can, and it's so funny about that conversation about can black people be racist? We can, but not in the way that people think, right? Because if racism is about upholding the white supremacist power structure, black people absolutely can participate in that. I mean, we all seen the Boondocks. You've seen the Boondocks? Yeah. Uncle Ruckus is a great example of how a black person can uphold white supremacist
history
power
lesson. In the colonization of America, there was black conquistadors that was working with,
right.
Like, we don't like to talk about that, but there were, like, colonization. A lot of the colonization would not have happened if there wasn't collaboration between, like, Native Americans and, like, there was Sephardic, Moorish, like, in Spain, like,
right.
There's, before 1492, before the Spanish Inquisition, mm-hmm. you had, bunch of African, Berber, Moors running Spain, right?
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of black people running Spain, essentially, right? And then, nicely said, in Spain, there's an Inquisition, Catholic Inquisition came through, and they kicked out all the Jewish and Muslim people, mm-hmm. and that, also means you're black, right? At that time, right? And then also these black people going over the ocean to Caribbean, different areas, going mm-hmm.
to
France, Ireland, things like that. Becoming their crypto, they became crypto Jews. So that means, like, if you practice, like, Jewish or Muslim, you had to, like, convert to Catholicism or Christianity, but practice your religion in secret, right? So there was a lot of, like, people who were forced to convert to Catholicism, and they ended up helping, like, colonize America. There's art of, like, black men in their metal suits of armor holding the flags, mm-hmm. like the Spanish Inquisition flag. It's pretty interesting to see, like, and also interesting to see, like, black men in positions of power in that time.
Mm-hmm.
The person who navigator for Christopher Columbus' ship was a black man.
I did not know that.
There's a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Right. So that feeds into that, like, so black people can participate, right? So really what the phrase is that white people can't be victims of racism in America. So that's what's really, and so the second part to your question of like, how do I get people to talk about it, is what I tell people is we're so quick in America to try and find the quick snippets and break it down to its lowest common denominator. And that's the exact wrong thing to do. You see all that history you just went through and everything? That's complexity, right? And we need that to be part of the conversation because, and I'll speak to some of Trump's talking points, right? Like, and I don't believe in this language myself, but I'll use it because it's the language he uses. Illegals are bad. They come here, they take our jobs, they rape and kill.
They send their worst.
They send their worst, right?
Quote unquote.
And we need to build a wall to keep them out. That's easy to understand, right? It breaks it down. Point A, they're bad. 2, they're not supposed to be here. 3, they do wrong. 4, they don't pay attention.
It oversimplifies complex topics.
Exactly. And so as we're having these conversations, we need to embrace that complexity and understand that you can't separate that complexity. So when I start to dive into that, like one of my favorite things to talk about as an example is the defund the police movement, right? And it's so interesting with that movement because so many people feel strongly about it. And I just said in a presentation yesterday where this guy who works with the police was like, well, I hate that movement because if you remove the police from a neighborhood, it all goes bad. And when the danger shows up, who's there to defend it, right? And it's like, well, the name, we can argue about whether or not the name was a good choice, right? But defund the police isn't actually about taking all the money from police and removing from the neighborhood. It's about, one, recognizing that police started out as slave patrols in America, so there's racism within how police develop, and we know that
ingrained in the system.
Ingrained in the system, right? And so we have to acknowledge that, right? The other piece is we talk about how police are funded and what we require them to do. One, we give them like military grade equipment to do what they do when they're supposed to be upholders of the peace. So what are we expecting from our military? So do we need to give them enough money for tanks? Do we need to give them enough money for tactical shotguns and blah, blah, blah? And I'm not saying yes or no to those things. I'm saying we need to really break down and say what is it actually the police budget needs to cover.
And it's actually pretty a shame when like you see like there's this school shooting, I think it was in Texas or somewhere, where it's like it had a whole SWAT military grade team pull up, and they're scared to go at one person, you know, and it's like, what's the point? So if you're spending millions of dollars on this equipment and these men are scared for their lives still, you might as well send a regular nigga in there.
And that gets to the second point, which is what are we asking the police to do, right? We ask the police to take care of mental health. Anytime there's a mental health call,
public service,
they got to go out there, right? Anytime there's domestic violence, they go out there. Anytime there's an actual active violent threat, they got to go out there. Anytime, you know, I lost my dog, you know, and they called the police, right? So really what it is we ask the police to do too much, and we fund them, and the way that we train policing in America, the way that we engage with them, there's sort of like that, it's that quote of,
so they're servants of the public, but they're mainly dealt to be like, or trained to be dealing with criminals.
And the way that they're trained is they're trained to see everybody as a potential adversary or villain. Mm-hmm. So they're hammers. When you train them to be hammers, everything looks like a nail. So when they got a call for a mental health issue, instead of being trained in the same way that social workers are, instead of sending a social worker out there to de-escalate a situation and whatnot, the police go out there thinking, okay, I need to make sure everybody's safe, and I need to make sure everything's. And if there's somebody who's having a particular,
their goal is to make sure this person doesn't kill himself, and that's it.
Or anybody else.
Yeah,
right?
It doesn't harm themselves or anyone
right.
else.
And say they come outside and they're waving a knife, right? And they look dangerous. They're upset. They pull out a gun and shoot them.
Yeah.
And we're asking police to. So when we say defund the police, and when you actually look into it, yes, there are the most extreme parts of saying get rid of the police. We don't need them. But really what a lot of people are asking for
is those psychopaths guns.
That would be helpful, but then we get into AI and diversity, and I just read a book on that. So anyways, but we get into what are we asking the police to do? How do we train them? What are the requirements to become a cop? Because all you need is a high school diploma and to kind of be in shape. And it's like, okay, well, lawyers have to go to school. You have to get an undergraduate degree. Then you have to go get a law degree.
I see some out of shape cops.
Then you have to pass the bar.
Yeah, shit is crazy.
To be a lawyer is difficult, right? But then as somebody who is allowed to And not just to interpret the law in court, to uphold and enforce the law and to be able to kill somebody for the law, you need a high school diploma and 6 months of boot camp. So it's
probably an hour, like 1,000 hours of like training, and that's it.
And so those are the things when we say defund the police, right? So I am not coming on here saying all cops are bad, right? Well, I think, and that's another one, right? We can talk about all cops are bad. That's another way to it's a catchy phrase,
like,
but it simplifies
a complex
it.
Topic.
Because really what it is the system of policing is based on racism. We know that racism exists in the police departments. We know that funding's bloated. We know that cops, even back in LA in the 50s, were basically mobsters, and there's been movies. And so when we talk about
racketeering operations,
and we especially like the war on drugs, right? And the CIA's pumping drugs, so it's like, so when we talk about these topics, and I think once I start to welcome complexity and diversity in the conversation, and we start to really break it down and help people understand how complicated this topic is, all of a sudden people get it. Ironically enough, people get more comfortable talking about it, because then what we do is we make it okay not to know everything. Because when I gave this presentation at Davis, when I was working there, it was funny. I was working as a program coordinator for biological science PhD students. So I shouldn't have even been talking about this to begin with, but I just got my doctorate. So I was like, oh yeah, I talk about diversity stuff. They're like, hey, can you talk about this and help us understand? So I'm sitting in a room full of professors, tenured professors who've been doing this for years, and PhD students who are working on, they're about to be next big researchers, right? And I start out my presentation and I said, all right, I'm going to tell y'all everything I know about cancer. And I brought that up because we had just gone through our application cycle, and everybody was like, we want to cure cancer, and the professors were sick of it. They were like, everybody wants to cure cancer. So I was like, I'm gonna tell y'all everything I know about cancer. I said, the first thing I said was, cancer's bad. Everybody in the room starts dying laughing. They're like, damn, you don't know shit. And I was like, no, I don't, right? But I was like, cancer's bad. It's a over division of cells. It's it's you sometimes treat it with chemo. So I sound stupid, right? And I'm like, am I stupid? No. Am I a bad person? No. Is there anything wrong with me? No. But I know this isn't my area of expertise. And yet, am I qualified to really be able to engage in this topic in any meaningful way? Am I qualified to be able to talk about what kind of prevention methods we should be using, or what type of cures should be out there, or where should we spend money? And everybody in the room is like, hell no. And I'm like, okay, so I want you to take yourselves, this room full of geniuses, and think about how much time you spent researching, exploring, and learning about this topic. And for a lot of them, especially because mostly white, mostly, come from privilege, they've never spent a lot of time thinking about this. And yet, had you asked them outside of the session, they would have had something to say about it. Well, how dare these people think that they can get access to resources, and how dare that they... But then it's like, well, what do you actually know about this topic? I do the same thing with people that talk about undocumented immigrants, right? They'll be like, well, I remember I was having a conversation with a graduate student, and she was just like, it's bullshit that they're getting all these resources. And I was like, and she was like, they should have to become citizens if they want things. And I just looked at her, and in the back of my mind, I was like, 5
fucking years later.
So I was like, don't you think they would if they could? And she kind of stuck. She was like, because you could tell she had never processed. All she heard was that's bullshit. They're taking our resources. They're taking our jobs. And she had never stopped to think, well, why wouldn't somebody become a U.S. citizen? If America is truly so great that the narrative you have in your head is that somebody either rode a boat across the sea, and I'm talking like a life raft across the sea, or worked with a coyote to hike over miles of desert and perilous journeys to sneak into this country, don't you think they would figure out how to become a citizen? Don't you think it would be easier to fill out the paperwork? But then, like you said, you actually
death in prison and worse.
Right, and you can't even access any of the benefits. You can barely get a driver's license. I think some states let you have a driver's license. Some states don't. You can't open a bank account. You can't access a majority of financial aid. You can't
get a job.
You can't do anything, right? So all of a sudden, you could see her mind start to turn, and I was like, don't you think they would if they could? And you could tell she just never thought about it. And so once we start...
And then there's crazy shit going on. There's cartel shit. I got a homie in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And he's saying the cartel got the streets. He was driving down the street. They, pulled up on him, guns, give you everything in the car. And they said, bye-bye. Left. And it's the doctors are right now are being like kind of like, it's like there's no access to doctors because the cartels got them on lock right now. So there's people with diabetes, huge diabetes issue in Mexico
because of the coke. Yep.
Either rice, beans. There's a lots of components. It's a complex issue, but Coca-Cola is doing a number.
Yeah.
On those niggas.
So you talk about that, right? So that's the other component of the conversation is why would somebody come here, right? And if somebody is escaping danger, right? Like say it's a cartel issue, say it's famine, say it's regardless of the reason, right? Why are we treating it like it's awful that they're here, right? They're coming here for the same reasons, maybe not our ancestors, but like for the same reason a lot of people, relatives came for opportunity.
Better opportunity, yeah.
So that's how I approach those conversations, and what I find is that the last part I'll say about it is it's not necessarily about getting people to think the same way that I do. I just want to move the needle a little bit. I want them to have to think, or like to continue to, once they leave the conversation, to think like,
to be able to contemplate that,
right?
To give them a space to think about it,
right?
Very powerful,
because it's not about in those conversations. Okay, yes, there are right and wrong answers, but it's not necessarily about
complex,
right? And to be like,
deep.
Okay, and if your whole life,
I would even say there's right and wrong because like these things are so deep. It's like it's in an area of gray where it's like who
right.
you are. It changes. Like if you're white, you benefit from racism. If you're black, you you benefit from systemic racism. If you're black, you suffer from systemic racism. And it's like, what can you as an individual even do about that?
So that's a good question, right? I mean, there's a quote from the Boondocks because Huey went on a hunger strike and he was like, "What do you do when there's nothing you can do and there's nothing you can do about it?" And Granddad was like, "You do what you can." Right? And so a lot of people say, like, I think that's the other part is people can get very nihilistic, like, well, how do you change the system? What do you do? I work in higher education.
That's kind of why I got this going, just trying to get all I can is get the word out.
Right.
Speak about it, get the word out. And,
right. And
someone else is going to speak about it. Eventually he's going to plant a seed in minds.
And that's what it is, right? Like it's if you can change, if you can make an impact in your one community.
Impacted me already with this conversation. I'm thinking about college pretty differently. Like lots of I've already known great opportunities. I already had an idea of wow, college is actually pretty cool. But
right. So that's kind of it.
Yeah, for sure. I had some other questions, but I forgot. Bro. About diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
How long are we? Hour.
We already had an hour.
Oh,
we should probably call it
okay,
day.
Yeah. All right.
I could go on for days.
Honestly, we could do these other questions. These
one or two more little short, what inspired you to really want to get into higher education?
Oh, well.
Like a little what's your plans moving forward in higher education, and then just call it with a little
okay,
where to find you type.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll keep it brief. I promise.
Shout out to our tech man Luca.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, people have been wanting some longer episodes too, so this will be good.
Okay.
So what are some? You want to speak on some of your inspirations for being like the man that you are today?
Yeah, I think it was. So there's a
Nelson Mandela. No.
I really need to learn more about him. But for me, so as I was going through it, what helped me get to where I'm at, there's a dude, he goes by the hip hop preacher. His name is Eric Thomas. He's got an old video on YouTube called The Secret to Success. Highly recommend you go watch that video. It's 20 minutes of your time. It's even got
I think I might have seen him.
And it's the story about when you breathe, when you learn, when you succeed as bad as you want to breathe, only then will you be succurthable. So go.
Yeah. I've seen him. He's a black guy.
Yeah, bald head. He hella energetic.
I had my middle school teacher, my 9th grade math teacher, Mr. Hodges, every day, video. As soon as we got in the classroom, missed whatever that guy's name was, and we all was like, "Man, this nigga corny as hell. Get this nigga off my screen."
Lock in. He know what he talking about because
we all knew it was facts though.
So that kind of inspired me. But the other thing was I have this. You only get roughly about 80 years on Earth, right? What do you want to do with your 80 years? And for me,
I say 72.
Well, it varies, right? Some people make it to 114, right? But in my life, I'm like, okay, I got 80 years, roughly, give or take. What do I want to do with that, right? And I'm an adventurer at heart. So sometimes it's like, let's go kayaking, let's go snowboarding, let's go. But for me, I'm like, this education thing, I can explore and dive deeply into things that I want to do. So that's part of what inspires me. The other thing is just knowing that, I get inspired because I know I'm not the first person to do this, right? I don't know how many people know people who have doctorates, right? But when you start to figure it out, you realize, oh, it's all doable. So that's
I don't know
it
nobody
too.
with a doctorate besides you.
Right? But you've known me your whole life. I'm a regular person, and yet I managed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's stopping you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to the Eric Thomas video. So that's really what inspires me, is just wanting to see what I'm capable of.
How far can you go?
Right? And the only thing stopping me is me. So
yeah, that's something I've learned, especially with this business, where it's like, that's why I'm like, how far can I take this? You
Go
know,
for
like
it.
the only thing stopping us is us, you
Right.
know? Like,
and you know what? If you fail, so be it. You know,
not everything goes up thousands of plays, but you know, it's all learning process.
It's all learning, right? And if you stick with it and you grind it out, you're good.
We good. I just want to thank you for coming on the Tsunamii exclusive interviews. We only did a few of our questions, but you know, as always, next time we got all. I guess each one of these questions could be its own interview, honestly.
And I'm happy to come back as often as y'all
sure.
want me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming on, speaking on college, diversity and inclusion, Taylor Swift. We got into it, but really amazing interview. I'm sure our lovers are going to like it.
Okay.
If you like this interview, please like, comment, subscribe, share it with your homies. You know, get the word out. That college is pretty cool.
And I'll put out one other thing, because you did that interview with Money Man.
With the plan.
Solid interview. But he put a call out to say, like, well, if you know, he a street dude. He was like, well, if you're not from the streets and you know how to get it, let me know. So if anybody reaches out to you saying, hey, I seen this interview and like, dude, sound like he got it together, I'd love to speak to him and just like figure out how to do my thing, or like figure out how to get into college. Completely free. I don't want nothing. I make enough money. I'm good. Happy to do it. So I will give coaching to whoever wants.
You might regret that.
But it's one, responding to the call out, right? But then two, it's how you give back, right?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I'm at a place where I have the most money to be able to give back, but I got enough knowledge about how to navigate the system that I'm happy to help whoever wants it.
For sure.
But they have to want it,
They
right?
don't
Like
want it, yeah.
I'm not even throwing up contact information. They got to reach out to you.
Yeah, reach out to me. No, yeah, for sure.
And then we'll get locked in, and I'll help them do whatever it is they want to do. Whether that's like, you just need somebody to check in on you and make sure you're good, or you need somebody to be like, hey, I cannot figure out how to get up on time, or I can't figure out how to manage my time, or I can't, like, I'm trying to pass this class and I'm struggling. Holla at me. So that's what I'll do for your listeners.
For sure. Yeah, don't forget to hit up Dr. Ross for
They
career or
gotta
life.
come through you.
Oh yeah, no, they gonna hit us up if you want to speak to Dr. Ross about career or life navigation, goals, or just a little check in. Great fellow, grew up with him. He's awesome. Thank you for coming out, and
No problem.
we're gonna see y'all next time. Thank you.
Absolutely.